All right, we're going to talk about common functions. Speaking of fun, something that I think is fun is record players. I actually got one for my birthday this past year, and I even got an awesome record when I went to Nashville. That's my girl, Marin Morris. Marin, if you ever see this math video, first of all, why are you watching it? Second of all, I love you. Anyway, let's get to the math. So the first common function, we are very familiar with the linear function of x equals x or y equals x. We also have seen this form before, y equals mx plus b. Can you think of what that's called? But we know that the m would represent slope, the b would represent our y-intercept, and this would just be x, of course. All right, the next one is called the greatest integer function. Looks like this. This one actually probably is new to a lot of us, or maybe you've just seen it before. We also sometimes refer to this as the step function. Maybe you have guessed why it might be called that. But something that's really important to note about this one. Now, you can't tell based off of the picture of the graph that you have, but each step on the left side is a closed circle, and on the right side is an open. So I'm actually going to draw that on a few of these, just so we can kind of visualize it better. Of course, there's a reason why this is important to note. That makes this graph meet the requirement of being a function. If we think about what it means to be a function, now it does satisfy that. Also, something to note is that its domain, left to right, would be all real numbers, or negative infinity to infinity. For all x values, this function is defined. So just something to think about. Next, we have our signum function. Also something that you can't tell by this graph, so we're going to draw it in. There is a point at 0, 0, which means in order for this to be a function, these would be open circles. Very similar, this domain left to right would be negative infinity to infinity. We have our quadratic function. We can do a lot of things with this. We spend a lot of time on this. So I'm guessing you know a lot about quadratics. The cubic function, same thing. This should look very familiar. There's probably a lot of things you know about it already. Our absolute value function. Just something that I want you guys to keep in mind is that the right side of this graph is the function y equals x, and the left side of this graph is y equals negative x. And I bring that up because I want you to think about how we actually solve absolute value equations. We know that absolute value means distance from 0. So just something to keep in mind. We have our reciprocal function, 1 over x. This is a type of hyperbola. One thing I want you to think about, and you've heard these words before, this graph does have a vertical asymptote at x equals 0, and also has a horizontal asymptote at y equals 0. So those words should sound familiar. We'll spend a lot of time talking about those during the year. Last one here would be our square root function. Just want us to keep in mind that it is defined at 0, square root of 0, right? So, in conclusion, hopefully you are already pretty familiar with all of these except potentially the greatest integer function and the signum function.